Welcome back to Leave the World Behind, What the Film Isn't Saying Out Loud. I am Monica, and this is part two, The Blue Wall Cracks. If you're just joining me, let me quickly catch you up on where we've been. In part one, I established the surface story, what everyone thinks the movie is about. We looked at the obvious themes that critics and audience noticed right off the top: technology collapse, paranoia and distrust, class and race tensions, environmental disasters, and social breakdown. Those are real themes. The film absolutely explores all of them. And for most people, that was where the analysis ends. But I told you at the end of part one that those surface themes might be exactly what the filmmakers want us to focus on. What if, while you're paying attention to technology and paranoia, you're missing something much deeper? What if there's another film hiding underneath? A film told through Easter eggs, through symbols, through details that most people didn't even notice. Well, today in part two, we stop talking about possibilities and start revealing proof. We're going to examine the prologue, the crucial 5 to 10 minutes at the beginning of the film before the story really begins. And I'm going to show you that the filmmakers announced their entire thesis in those opening minutes. They tell you exactly what this movie is about, but that's only if you know how to read the signs. We're going to look at 7 key elements, and I'm not going to tell you what those elements are right off top. We're going to go through the sides. I don't have many, but each one of these elements that I point out today, they're Easter eggs. And I went through last week exactly what Easter eggs are in a movie. So if you didn't watch part one, that's going to be critical that you go back and watch it, just simply because it sets up and it goes over the surface themes. But each one of the issues that we're going to discuss today are Easter egg. Each one is a breadcrumb, and we connect them all together. You're going to see that this film announced its thesis about. I'm going to wait. I'll let you figure it out as we go along. Some of you already reached out and said you think you know where I'm going. And for that, I applaud you, because that means you challenged yourself to go deeper. And that's what this is about. It's a film within the film. And it requires you to go deeper, but it also requires you to acknowledge something. Acknowledge what some are being silent about and what some are screaming about. And somewhere in the middle is the truth. And so I ask you to buckle up, to stay with me. Part two is where we crack the code wide open. Part two is where the blue wall, that false sense of comfort and security, finally cracks and reveals what's underneath. So I'm going to begin at the very beginning with images that look peaceful but carry something underneath. I thought about making this into a video that was really nice and the production would have been great and all of that. But for me, this is just about getting the story, the analysis out there. So hang with me. I don't know how long this episode is going to be. Originally, I said I was going to do 10 to 15-minute episodes, probably no longer than 20 minutes. But as I was doing part one, I realized that I don't want to rush through this just because people don't want to take the time to listen, or the attention span is just different because we live in a microwave society. But that's part of the problem. The problem is that we don't want to sit and hear the truth. We don't want to hear what's being exposed, which is exactly what the movie wants you to do. It just wants you to look at the surface and not take the time to really digest and analyze the story that is being said. So let's go ahead and get started. So look at this picture. I named it The Calm Before the Storm. The film opens with these beautiful, serene shots of New York, the Statue of Liberty, the silhouettes of the building, the sunset, the perfect skyline is bathed in a golden light. It looks like it's just about either sunrise or sunset. And you see residential buildings suggesting everyday life continuing undisturbed. Beautiful brick architecture. You see the windows. It represents stability, permanence, civilization at its peak. These images, they're what some would call gorgeous. They're calming. They make you feel like everything is normal, everything is safe. This is the calm before the storm. But here's what's happening. The film is using visual serenity to create a dramatic irony. The beauty is deceptive. That pristine harbor view, those perfect golden tones, they're masking what's already begun underneath. The chaos is already in motion, but the surface looks so peaceful. This is important because it mirrors what the film is doing on a larger level. America looks stable. Our systems look permanent. Our civilization looks solid. But underneath, there are cracks. There are unresolved issues. There are sins that were never addressed. Again, the calm before the storm isn't just about an apocalypse that's coming in the plot. We went over that last week when I went over the different themes that the movie is clearly showing you. But underneath. So it's not just about the apocalypse that's coming. It's about America's long delayed reckoning. We've been enjoying the golden hour, the beautiful architecture, the comfortable life, while ignoring the foundation underneath. And notice these aren't really random buildings. The film specifically shows us the New York skyline. It shows us calmness. It's just showing you a city that's diverse. But right before we get to what we're going to talk about, I'm not going to expose it yet, but it will come in a couple of slides. I just want you to get that sense of serenity that is showing you here. The brick buildings that look permanent, right before we see a crack that reveals structural instability. Again, everything looks fine, everything looks beautiful, but something is deeply wrong underneath. The visual is a calm lie, and we're about to find out why. So now we transition from those beautiful exterior shots to an interior space. And this is the bedroom of two of the main characters, Clay and Amanda. This is their bedroom in Brooklyn. And immediately we see a color shift. The warm golden tones disappear and we're overwhelmed by blue. The color blue. Blue dominates the entire scene. The walls are blue. The bedding is blue. The light is blue. Everything is blue. And at first glance, that seems fine, even soothing. Blue is supposed to represent calm, safety, tranquility, peace. Blue is the color of clear skies and peaceful waters. Blue should make you feel secure. And I think that's the point, or one of the points. The bedroom appears serene and restful. It looks like a safe, comfortable space where people sleep peacefully every night. But here's the contradiction. While all that calming blue surrounds them, there's a crack in their wall. And I highlighted it in red. You can see it clearly, a visible fracture in the structure of their home. So we have deceptive comfort. The blue creates a false sense of security. The soothing color is masking underlying danger. The crack in the wall contradicts the blue's peaceful promise. This is a visual contradiction. Comfort versus threat. Blue becomes a false security blanket. It's saying everything is fine, everything is peaceful, you're safe here. But the crack says, no, you're not. The foundation is compromised. The structure is failing. And think about what blue could also represent: melancholy, sadness, depression. The phrase feeling blue. Sometimes we think of law enforcement, blue uniforms, blue lights. The Union in the Civil War with the blue and gray uniforms. The blue has multiple meanings, and not all of them are comforting. The film is using blue to lull us and the characters into thinking everything is okay. But that crack tell us the truth. Nothing is okay because the foundation was never sound. I don't know if you all are picking up what I'm putting down here, but stay with me because there's more. If you look at the arrow, you see up close the crack in the wall, a literal structural failure. It is a metaphor for the society collapsing. We talked about the society collapsing last week. But here's this: the foundation of civilization is cracking apart. What appears solid, like home safety, is actually quite fragile. Physical manifestation of an invisible crisis. Our domestic space is no longer secure. It's a symbol of things falling apart from within. The crack suggests that the entire infrastructure, both physical and social, that people rely on for security is unstable. It's not just surface damage. It's deep structural failure that threatens the entire system. The foundation itself is compromised, making everything built on top of that foundation vulnerable. America's foundational crack has always been there. It's not new. It's not caused by any current crisis that we may be thinking of right now. The crisis just forces us to finally see it. Clay and Amanda sleep in a bedroom with a cracked wall every night. They've probably stopped noticing it. Or did they ever notice it? Then they go on vacation, which is what the story is about, to escape. But can you really escape a cracked foundation? The chaos in the film isn't creating the problem, it's revealing what's already broken. I hope you see what I'm doing here. I hope you're picking up on where I'm placing emphasis and where I'm trying to get you to see what we see in this shot here. And if you're really thinking and allowing your mind to go a little further, a little beneath the surface, the film is saying you can leave your house, but you can't leave the crack. You can go on vacation, but the foundation is still damaged. America can try to move forward, but the damage that I'm going to expose is still there, is still structural, and is still unresolved. This is an incredibly important detail to include here and why I'm bringing it out. And this is all in the prologue of the movie. This is within the first few minutes of the movie. It opens up to this scene. So if you're like me and you analyze everything, you automatically start taking note of things that's around the people or what they're showing. This film here, this section here, is actually Clay in bed. You don't see Clay first, but you see that large foundation crack, or a large crack, I should say, because you don't see the foundation, but you see the large crack against the blue wall. Again, it's contradictory. It should be enough to make you go, hmm, Anything in a movie is not there for just nothing. It's there for a reason. It's not simply for entertainment. Some movies are, but this one isn't. So this crack here establishes that the world being left behind was already fractured before the story even begins. That sense of security was already broken. So let's talk about that crack because this is not just surface damage. It is not just cosmetic. This is structural failure. And yes, I keep repeating myself because I want you to get it. I want you to remember, I told you last week, we're going on an Easter egg hunt, and I want you to come on this journey with me. I want you to involve your emotions, but not be emotional, but involve your emotions, involve your mind, involve your heart. Allow yourself to be open and hear what I'm saying. Take in everything that you're seeing. This crack in their bedroom wall is a metaphor for that collapse. Again, remember, that's a crucial detail to this entire movie. Just know that the crack was already there. Already there. And this silent pause is on purpose to allow you to gather and take in the scene, the blue, the crack. Now, right after Amanda and Clay starts talking, it goes to this screen here, Leave the World Behind. And the song that's playing in the background is called The Revenge by Joey Badass. It's playing over the title card. This is huge. Let's look at what this song represents. So Joey Badass, he's a Brooklyn rapper known for conscious hip hop. His work often addresses systemic racism, police brutality, Black history. The Revenge specifically deals with themes of retribution and reckoning. The song choice for the opening of this movie is called The Revenge. It's not random, it's not subtle. It's playing as the title, Leave the World Behind, appears. It sets the tone before the story really even truly starts. It's something, it signals that something is coming back, something will be answered for. The film opens with a song about revenge and reckoning while displaying a title about leaving the world behind. So the question automatically in your mind, if you're not one to be analytical, if you're not that way, let me help you here. So some of the questions you should ask yourself as you're looking at the title slide and you're hearing the song, The Revenge playing, you should begin to ask yourself, whose revenge? What's being left behind? What's coming to collect? And then you combine that with the scene we just left, the crack already there, the foundation already damaged. That is what you have to ask yourself. Remember, I said the film is announcing its thesis in the first few minutes of the movie. But that's only if you're paying attention, or are you simply looking at this as simply entertainment? It's about revenge reckoning for America's foundational sin. And if you haven't picked up what I'm laying down yet, stay tuned. So, as the title card Leave the World Behind appears on the screen, there's a song playing, and I'm going to say it again. It's a song by Joey Badass called The Revenge. He's a Brooklyn rapper known for his conscious hip hop, addressing systemic racism, police brutality, and Black history. Just pause and think on that. Do you think that's random? It's setting the tone before the story even starts. It's signaling that something is coming back. Something will be answered for. Someone is coming to collect a debt. Again, I'm pausing so because I want you to get again engage with me here. Think about it. The musical choices are deliberate, as is everything else in this movie. The revenge tells you up front that this is payback. This is what happens when centuries of injustice finally comes home to roost. I think you know where I'm going here, but as they say, but wait, there's more. So now the film, after you play the revenge, it shows this theme of everybody being in the car. Amanda Clay, and the bottom one is their son Archie, and the one that's holding the iPad with friends playing. Those are their kids. And so Rose, she's very obsessed with finishing the TV show Friends. It's a show with an all-white cast set in diverse New York City. I don't know if you all remember when this show was out, or maybe some of you didn't even know that there was some conflict about it because it was set in New York, but it wasn't very diverse. So, what am I saying here? You're going to see as the film progresses that Rose is very obsessed with watching Friends. She made it to the final episode. And as they're driving in the car, it gives you an indication that something's already wrong because she's losing signal and it freezes on her. And all she does is looks up in the sky. But she is so separated in this escape that she literally asks her dad, she asks Clay, when they get back home, can he take her to the place that they usually meet, the bar that they usually meet in, the Friends cast? Can he take her there? And he has to tell her, well, honey, I don't think it's real. It's just a set. That wasn't random either, because a lot of people feel that this structure, this foundational issue isn't real. Friends has come one of the most popular shows in television history by creating a version of New York where people of color barely exist. Rose find comfort in this sanitized, whitewashed narrative. She can't see what's happening in the real world around her because she's fixated on this artificial one. She needs to finish Friends. She needs that familiar, comfortable ending where everything works out in a world that looks like her. Just pause and think of that a little bit. And at the bottom, you see Charlie there. They're having a discussion. Charlie is playing a game, which I don't show that part. And you see he's also has his Beats by Dre on. And they're just riding around. Amanda's actually on the phone with work, letting them know that she's going away, but they can still talk to her. And the father's driving, listening to music. The son is playing a game while also listening to his Beats by Dre. And the daughter is what listening to her iPad. So you have all of this going on, and it just again emphasizes that total reliance on technology. But then this scene closes in on Archie's shorts. The black and white checkerboard. As you see there, I labeled it hidden powers. The black and white checkerboard is a Masonic symbolism. It represents duality, good, evil, order, chaos. It's the pattern that's used in most of the lodges. It suggests hidden power structures at work, elite knowledge versus public ignorance. So basically, the characters in this movie are pawns in a larger game. But when you look at the black and white, the black versus white in stark alternating squares, no gray area, no mix, just rigid separation, visual representation of binary racial dynamics. It's, if you look at his pants, may even think of chess or checkerboard, strategy, competition, winners and losers, pieces being moved around one side versus the other. And then you can't help but think about Freemasonry and secret societies, with their checkerboard floors in the Masonic temples. It's just getting heavy to me now because, again, I'm just thinking about, again, I watched this movie 100 times and I'm just thinking about all of the little things that I picked up. And I'm sure I missed some things. But also what's funny about Freemasonry. Freemasonry, to understand the deeper irony of this symbol in the film, exploring racial tension, we must confront even Freemasonry's historical contradictions regarding race. Freemasonry emerged in the Enlightenment era, proclaiming universal principles of brotherhood, equality, and the inherent dignity of all people. Its rituals emphasize that all members, regardless of worldly status, are equals within the lodge. Yet in America, these lofty ideals coexisted with the brutal reality of something else that was going on. It was a contradiction in many members' minds. Many of America's most prominent founding fathers were both Freemasons, but they were also slaveholders. I know, Monica, now you're going too far. You said the taboo word. It's bad enough you're talking black or white. It's bad enough you said something was whitewashed and that's why Rose was watching Friends. Monica, you're just looking at this too much. Let me continue. So some of our early Freemason, founding fathers such as George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, though some of them became abolitionists later, but some of the others, like James Monroe, Andrew Jackson, there were some others. These men participated in Freemasonry, celebrating universal brotherhood, but yet they would return home to plantations worked by enslaved people they considered property. The fraternity, as an institution, generally avoided taking official positions on slavery. I could not really find much information on it. Um, I just picked up that it seemed like they didn't really take an official stance. I don't know if it was really discussed back then. Again, with the research that I did do, I was not able to find much. So I felt that it was a convenient silence that allowed the contradiction, talking about a unified brotherhood, yet going home to plantations and slaves that you've owned, it allowed the contradiction to persist. Southern lodges in particular were deeply invested in maintaining slavery, with many owners, excuse me, sorry, holding prominent positions. Freemasonry had an emphasis on discretion, loyalty, and maintaining harmony within the brotherhood. So that meant that challenging a fellow Mason's participation in slavery was effectively discouraged. Again, they were focused on celebrating human dignity, brotherhood, unity, but it failed to extend beyond the lodge room doors. So, Monica, what are you talking about? What are you talking about here? Where's your proof? Well, let's talk about Prince Hall Freemasonry. Why was Prince Hall Freemasonry created? Why? Because the brotherhood was denied. What are you talking about, Monica? Well, one of the main parts of Freemasonry's racial history is the story of Prince Hall Freemasonry. In 1775, Prince Hall, a free black man in Boston, along with 14 other free African Americans, was initiated into a British military lodge. When they sought to establish their own lodge and requested a charter from the American Freemasonry, they were refused. Instead, they obtained a charter from the Grand Lodge of England in 1784, establishing African Lodge number 459, the first lodge of Black Freemasons in America. This moment crystallized a racial division that would persist for nearly 2 centuries. Prince Hall and his followers embraced the same Freemasonry principles, performed the same rituals, and sought the same enlightenment as their white counterparts. Yet, mainstream America Freemasonry, the very institution claiming to champion universal brotherhood, refused to recognize Prince Hall lodges as legitimate. This wasn't a brief oversight or regional anomaly. Excuse me. Mouth getting dry here. Sorry, this is a lot. It was systemic exclusion that lasted well into the 20th century. Some mainstream Grand Lodges didn't even recognize Prince Hall Freemasonry until the 1990s, and a few still maintain their refusal today. So there are some Freemasons from some lodges that still deny brotherhood to Black people. So the Prince Hall Freemasons had to establish their own network of lodges, becoming pillars of African American communities. These lodges provided spaces for Black men to organize, support one another, and work toward equality. Ironically, fulfilling um, the ideals of brotherhood more authentically than the segregated mainstream lodges that excluded them. The dual existence of white and black traditions, both claiming the same heritage but remaining separate and unequal, mirrors the broader American story of proclaimed ideals versus lived reality. Again, the checkerboard floor, meant to symbolize harmony between black and white, balance between opposites, became a bitter irony when black men literally weren't allowed to walk on those floors in white lodges. The symbol of unity masked profound division. So to me, the symbolism in Leave the World Behind, when we bring this historical context to Leave the World Behind, the checkered pattern becomes richly layered in meaning. I know some of you still think that I'm reaching, but again, just stay with me. Stay with me a little longer. So just as the checkerboard presents black and white squares occupying the same board in apparent harmony, the film shows two families, one white, one black, occupying the same space. Again, we went over this last week. Yet, like the squares on the checkerboard, they remain fundamentally separate, never truly merging. Although in the movie, they do merge a little, but you still feel that there is some hesitancy there. The pattern suggests order and balance, but the film reveals how quickly that illusion shatters under pressure. Proximity is not equality. Sharing space is not the same as trust or genuine connection. So Freemasonry positioned itself as an Enlightenment institution promoting reason, brotherhood, and human progress, yet it perpetuated exclusion and made peace with slavery. Similarly, the film's characters are educated, affluent, liberal people who should embody progress and equality. However, when crisis arrives, however, their enlightened veneer cracks, revealing prejudices, suspicion, and power dynamics they prefer not to acknowledge. I know I wrote a lot here. I'm sorry. Well, no, I'm not sorry. There's a reason why I'm bringing all of this out. The Masonic symbol reminds us that America has always proclaimed high ideals while failing to live them. So again, I'm sitting here thinking about the irony of brotherhood, perhaps most pointedly, the symbol's appearance in a narrative about racial mistrust and the breakdown of social bonds highlights the irony. It's a painful irony. They did not zoom in on his shorts for nothing. So the conclusion for this particular slide is that the checkered pattern in Leave the World Behind works on multiple levels precisely because of its loaded history. It represents duality and balance, but beneath that surface beauty lies a complicated legacy of exclusion, hypocrisy, and unfulfilled promises. The same pattern that was meant to symbolize enlightenment and brotherhood also marked spaces where brotherhood was denied based on race. This makes the symbol perfect for the film as it brings out America's racial dynamics and the fragility of social progress. It was America, like Freemasonry, was founded on noble principles that nonetheless participated in and perpetuated a racial hierarchy. America has always had a contradiction between stated ideals and lived reality. The black and white squares sit side by side on the same board, but they never occupy the same square. They remain distinct, separate, forever alternating, but never merging. So when crisis comes, as it does in the film and as it does every day now, the pretense of harmony, it falls away. The checkerboard pattern remains, but its meaning shifts from symbol of balance to reminders of persistent division, a visual echo of America's ongoing struggle with the distance between what we claim to believe and how we actually treat one another when the world falls apart. So I'm just breathing here, just taking a breath, taking a pause, because again, at this point, those of you who are watching, some people may have even turned it off by now, because again, you don't want to face the reality that there is a racial divide in America. Some people want to say that racism never exists or does not exist, I should say, because clearly we know it did exist. But some people want to say that racism no longer exists. And then we have the other side that says it's everything's racist. But who's right? We absolutely know that racism still exists today. Whether people want to admit it or not, some are very blatant with it. But then we also know that everything isn't racist. Everything is not based on racism. Some things are just, there just is. So some of you may be thinking, Monica, you're reaching. This is just a movie. So what? He's wearing checkered shorts. This has nothing to do with Freemasonry. It has nothing to do with racial tensions. It has nothing to do with what you're trying to pull out here. You're one of those who think there's racism everywhere. Okay. So while they're driving in the car, while Amanda's talking to her coworker, she is they're in the car, ready to drive to this vacation home that they've rented. And the lady that's on the phone with Amanda goes, she wanted to say, hey, can I talk to you about the Conventura account? That's also an Easter egg. The creator of this movie, he also has another set of shows that he watches where that account is prevalent in there. I can't think of the name of it right now. I can't. I'm sure some of you may know. But that word means, the confictura means, it's a Latin word meaning imagination, fabrication, or made up, a falsehood. Again, another Easter egg that you're supposed to pick up. They're also heading to East Hampton. That's where the vacation home is, in East Hampton, New York. And just so you know, East Hampton was an iconic vacation destination during the Civil Rights Movement. But again, I'm making this all up, right? Let me bring you to the very next slide. What I want you to pick up here is, this is the slide they show. I know you all are reading, but this is the slide. This is the scene that they're showing as they're driving down the road and they're coming to an exit. They have Fort Mose Road, or they have Point Comfort at exit 76. And exit 76 is an exit only. The exit number directly references 1776 and America independence, but the destination is Point Comfort. Point Comfort is where slavery began. And what's so ironic about this, Monica? Maybe you're making up 76. Maybe you're making up 1776 and what it relates to. 1776, for some of you that don't realize, is the year that the Declaration of Independence was signed. The year that America was founded on the principle that all men are created equal and have unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Except that's not what actually happened, is it? 1776 declared freedom while hundreds of thousands of people remained enslaved. Thomas Jefferson wrote, all men are created equal, while enslaving over 600 people himself. The Constitution but gave them zero rights. So Exit 76 represents America's founding promise, a promise that was alive from the moment it was written. And in this movie, where does Exit 76 lead? Look at the sign. It shows two destinations. One is Point Comfort. You could take that exit, or you could take Fort Mose. Point Comfort, Virginia, in August 1619, a ship called the White Lion arrived at Old Point Comfort carrying approximately 20 enslaved Americans. This marked the beginning of slavery in the English colonies that would become the United States. This is where it started. This is where America's original sin was planted. So the devastating irony becomes crystal clear. Exit 76 representing 1776, the Declaration of Freedom and Equality, yet they're taking an exit that leads directly to Point Comfort where slavery began. So do you still think I'm making this up? Do you still think I'm over analyzing here? The route from America's founding ideals goes straight through to the place where enslavement started. You cannot get to modern America without going through slavery. The road to freedom goes through the site of bondage. So let's go back to the crack in the wall when I kept emphasizing that the foundation was broken. The foundation was cracked. The foundation was not stable. Now, do you see where I was going? America was founded on slavery. It was already a broken foundation. So this scene is also very important as well because Fort Mose, let's talk about that next. Fort Mose was the first legally sanctioned free black settlement in what would become the United States. It was established in Spanish Florida in 1738 as a refuge for enslaved people who escaped from the British colonies. So on this one scene here, this one screen here, you have Fort Mose Road, or you could take exit 76, the one that proclaims freedom to Point Comfort. So in this one scene, you have Point Comfort, you have Fort Mose, you have exit 76, all of American history, slavery's beginning, Black resistance and freedom, the nation's founding on well, not one sign, two signs, but in one scene. And it says exit only. So you have a choice. You can continue to go straight to freedom, or you could take exit 76, which proclaims freedom, but is leading you down to slavery. So there's no turning back if you take the exit only. There's no avoiding this history. There is no avoiding the history of slavery. You have to go through it to get an understanding of how America was built. So again, you have the Sanford family going on vacation, is literally driving down towards Point Comfort, not the actual Point Comfort, because again, remember the movie was um, filmed in New York. I mean, it was that's the setting. It is in New York. They're actually traveling to Long Island. But they're following, ironically, they're following the road that America laid out, traveling the path from declaration of freedom through the site of enslavement. And they have no idea what they're driving towards. But they're driving, they take the exit 76 because that's where they're going. They're going to the vacation home. Okay. So again, I hope you see now that I am not just making this up. Clearly, you see this is a blatant Easter egg. Some of you may not have caught it, but I caught it the first time I watched the movie. The very first time I watched the movie. Why? Because I know a little bit about history, just a little bit. And I knew what Fort Mose was, and I knew what Old Point Comfort was. It took me a minute to get the 76, but I got to 76 the second time I watched it, and I said, oh my goodness, look at what they're doing here. So as they're going to the vacation home and doing what they do, right? You have to understand that everything about this journey that this family is going on is built on deception. Remember, I told you what the again, imagination, fabrication, makeup, falsehood. There are reasons that they're putting these Easter eggs out there. It's deception. They give you the comfortable music, the upbeat music, the beautiful sceneries. It's a contradiction. The you know, the vacation destinations, all of it, all of it, it's obscuring the real destination, America's reckoning with slavery. So I'm sure some of you are probably like, wow, 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 okay, but maybe not. So this is the house, this is the vacation home. This is the vacation home that they're actually rented out for the long weekend or week or however long. But as they're driving to this house, guess what song is playing in the background? Misled by Kool and the Gang. This 1984 R&B classic has a smooth, nostalgic feel. The upbeat melody and familiar vocals create an atmosphere of carefree travel and family bonding as you see in the car. You see Clay tapping on the steering wheel as he's enjoying the beat. Amanda's talking on the phone. Archie playing his game with his Beats by Dre on and Rose watching Friends. Again, it just looks like it's carefree travel for a family. It feels like a normal vacation drive, just music playing, heading towards a relaxing weekend. But the song title and its lyrics, it tells a totally different story. Misled is about deception. It's about being fooled. It's about thinking something was true when it wasn't. It is about discovering you've been lied to. So again, let's tie it back to America. So America has been misled about this journey. We've been told a story about freedom and progress, about founding fathers and their liberty, about opportunity and justice for all. But what the film is saying is look at the actual road, look where it goes, and look where what it was built on. Just like Clay and Amanda seems to be misled in where they're going, misled in thinking they're going to have a comfortable family vacation and they're just going to get away and relax. They're being misled because we know that there's going to be a breakdown. Technology's going to go. They're going to do anything but relax and enjoy their time. But just like they've been misled about their destination, America has been misled about its own history. So let's go ahead and continue. I don't have too many more slides going. I know this is taking a long time, but I just want you to get it. So as they get to the house, of course, it's a vacation home, so you have to go to the grocery store, or we would call it a supermarket. But look at what they call it. You still see the comfortable blues, right? But look at what they call the supermarket. They call it a marketplace. I'm pausing for effect. Is it working? They didn't call it a grocery store. They didn't call it a supermarket. It was a deliberate word choice. Wondering if anyone's getting it yet. If not, let me help you. The use of the word marketplace instead of a neutral term like a grocery store, a supermarket, it evokes the historical reality that Point Comfort was a place where enslaved people were literally bought and sold in markets. The word choice connects modern commercial activity to the site's dark history, meaning Point Comfort site. It was the center of human commerce, meaning buying and selling human beings. Now let me point out something that's easy to miss. I'm going to hold off on that. Never mind. Let me hold off because I don't want to give too much away in this one because I do have a part 3. Slave markets were the commercial centers where enslaved people were literally bought and sold as property. They were called markets. The slave trade was a market economy. Again, Point Comfort Marketplace, where the first enslaved Africans arrived and where human beings were bought and sold in markets for over 2 centuries. The film is saying the marketplace never really changed. We have commerce that continues on ground that's soaked in the blood of the enslaved. We're still buying and selling on the same land where people were once bought and sold. Sure, it may be a small detail. It may have been easy to miss. But that's what Easter eggs are. They're small, deliberate choices that reward close attention. So she comes back home and they speak about going to the beach. They're going to go to the beach. And here's another little play on technology. The next slide you see here, I highlighted it in red and green. But if you look at the bigger red, that is a beat by Dre. That's a headphone design. And then the one that's highlighted in green, that's an AirPod. Don't know if any of you caught that. That's exactly what it is. A headphone, a Beats by Dre, and an AirPod. Again, an Easter egg about an over-reliance on technology. I just wanted to include that side because I actually thought that was kind of clever. So now they're heading to the beach. For those of you who still think I'm just, I'm just making things up. Okay. This is the beach. That's the family. That's Clay and Amanda and all of them walking towards the beach. And guess what the beach is called? Charleston Harbor. Okay. For those of you that maybe don't remember the history, Charleston Harbor was the largest single point of entry for enslaved Africans in American history, with about 40% of all enslaved Africans brought to North America passing through Charleston Harbor. Nearly 1,000 slave ship cargoes entered Charleston Harbor between 1670 and 1808. During 1806 and 1807, just under 200 slave ship cargoes brought over 33,000 enslaved Africans. It was the busiest period in the entire history of the American slave trade. After 1808, Charleston became a major center for the domestic slave trade, with over 1 million African-born slaves sold to working, expanding cotton and sugar plantations. So after serving quarantine at Sullivan's Island or James Island, the slave ships would sail through Charleston Harbor and up the Cooper River and docked at the wharf. So the process was basically, from my research and from what I can remember and understand, I'm trying to um, get an understanding of, what I've written here and what I have on my notes. But the ships entered Charleston Harbor from the Atlantic. Enslaved Africans were quarantined on the islands in the harbor. The ships then sailed up the Cooper River. It was part of the Charleston Harbor system, if I understood it correctly, what I studied. And they docked at Gaston's Wharf for unloading and sale. So because this is where the beach scenes are set, this location is not random. It's not simply a random thing. Oh, let's just decide to name the beach in a movie that's based in New York, Charleston Harbor. So the point is, these Easter eggs that they placed in the movie were not accidents. They're not just because. Again, and mind you, we're still within the first 10 minutes or so of the movie, 10, 15 minutes maybe. I don't remember. Remember, this setup is really giving you the thesis of the entire movie. So now they're on the beach, they're relaxing, and that's the phone that Archie is holding. He has a girl, or I guess it's his girlfriend, it doesn't really say. And she sent him her location. And she's actually currently vacationing in Sag Harbor, New York, which is another beach area. And so he's asking his mom, can they go there? And it's funny how she says, no, that's over an hour away. I don't know. Again, picking up on little clues, it's over an hour away. Separation. They're at this rich vacation home at this beach, this nice beach. And part of what Amanda says when she gets on the beach, we basically have this entire beach to ourselves. So why did I point this out? Because Sag Harbor flourished as a result of Jim Crow era segregation and was one of the only Black beach communities along the East Coast. offering a refuge from racism for middle-class African American families. Now, in the film, Archie mentions that he wants to go there, right? He's interested in meeting a girl there, like I said, and it just seems like it's just part of the movie. But again, the location, what they're stating, it matters because Sag Harbor has a very specific history in Black American culture. And again, Amanda made it a point to say that's an hour away from us. So it's located in the Hamptons area of Long Island. Again, um, white Americans were, I mean, sorry. Well, yeah, this is where let me just say here, some beaches, black families were excluded from. So white Americans had their own beaches, and some beaches black families were not able um, to go to those beaches. So that's why it flourished during the Jim Crow era of segregation. And so while Black Americans were excluded from most of the beach communities, Sag Harbor became one of the few places where middle-class Black families could own property and vacation. So it was a place that represents Black success, Black leisure, Black freedom, in a time when those things were systematically denied. So some formerly enslaved people settled in this area after the Civil War. It became a symbol of what Black Americans could build when given even a small measure of freedom and opportunity. So again, let's break it down. The film is actually placing another historical marker here. So, where you may think that Archie is just mentioning wanting to go to Sag Harbor, the film is actually, again, laying out the little timeline here. You have Point Comfort, where slavery began, right? You have Charleston Harbor, which was the largest slave port. And it mentioned Fort Mose, which was the first free Black settlement, and then it mentions Sag Harbor, where we can see some kind of Black prosperity. So the film is actually mapping the geography of Black American history. Every location mentioned is part of the story of slavery, freedom, and resistance and survival. And so while they're on the beach and they're just getting here, and then the young daughter Rose noticed like a huge ship or boat in the water that's really coming towards them. I kind of zoomed this in just a little bit, but really when she first sees the boat, it's actually very far out. But the next scene, as you will see that all of a sudden, they're just relaxing, and Amanda asks Rose if she's okay. And she's saying, yeah, she's just looking at the boat come closer. As you see, the ship is enormous. It's not slowing down. It's not turning away. It's actually coming straight at them. And there's nothing anyone could do to stop it. And this scene here actually is you see the Clay, Amanda, and the children, they're actually packing up because they realize that this ship is coming towards them. So this is the moment in the vacation where the vacation actually begins to end. There's something different going on now. This is when that comfortable illusion begins to shatter. And this is when history stops being something in the past and becomes something crashing into the present with unstoppable force. The ship represents everything America tried to leave behind, everything we tried to bury, to forget, to move on from the past without truly addressing it. And now it's here, it's on the shore, it's in our faces, and it's unavoidable. And look at this scene. It's actually called the White Lion. Where did I say slavery was first established? In Old Point Comfort, Virginia. They took the exit for Old Point Comfort. That was the name of the exit. 1776, the Declaration of Independence. And I said that in 1619, about 20 Americans or Africans were on a ship taken to Fort Comfort, and that's where slavery began. And what did I say was the name of the ship that the slaves were brought to America on? The name of the ship was White Lion. It was the first slave ship to America in 1619. It is on this ship that is coming up on the beach. I told you it's the ship is beaching itself, is what I like to say. It is saying America's sins has come to shore. Remember Joey Badass's song, Revenge? It is time for some reckoning, is what this movie is actually saying. Past trauma physically manifesting in present day, and there's no escape. Even though they're running from it, this ship has basically come ashore. They can't escape it. Reckoning has arrived at their doorstep. And here's what's almost every viewer missed with that ship. Some people didn't. Some people said, oh, yeah, it's the White Lion. This was this, but they still took it as just a story for entertainment. Again, this is just the first 15, 20 minutes in the movie. The White Lion was an American ship that brought the first enslaved Africans to the English colony of Virginia in 1619. This is the historic vessel that arrived at Point Comfort, carrying those first approximately 20 enslaved people who marked the beginning of slavery in what would become the United States. The White Lion is not just a random ship in this movie. It is the ship. It's the beginning of everything. It's the moment when America's original sin was planted. And in this film, the White Lion has literally crashed onto the shore at a beach called Charleston Harbor, the largest slave port in American history. The ship that began slavery in 1619 is now beaching itself in the present day at the place where slavery, metaphorically in this film, at the place where slavery reached its massive scale. Remember, the beach's name is Charleston Harbor. So think about what this image means. America's past sins made manifest. The ghost of 1619 physically crashing into the present moment. History refusing to stay buried. The trauma that was never addressed, never healed, never accounted for, but now is washing up on the beach where people are trying to vacation. Again, is saying it's a reckoning. The characters are face to face with the White Lion. They're face to face with 1619. They're face to face with the beginning of slavery in America. And there's no escape. The ship has literally it came on shore. It's not leaving. You can't ignore it. You can't look away. You can't pretend it's not here. The white the White Lion crashing into Charleston Harbor is America's reckoning arriving at the shore. The past isn't staying in the past. The sins we try to leave behind are forcing their way into our present, and we have to deal with them. We have to finally, 400 plus years later, we have to deal with them. This image is chilling. It's chilling. It's the very ship that began America's original sin. So if you still think I am just making this up and I'm overly analyzing a movie, then at this point, I'm going to need to say that you are truly naive and you just refuse to accept the truth that this movie, although there had some obvious scenes, and they did have some obvious or not so obvious racism, right? Classism. Sure, maybe some of you were comfortable with that because it wasn't so blatant. You could see that in any movie. But this movie was set to let you know that in the season that we're in America today, that it is time to deal with the sins of America. I know some of you don't believe this. You're going to say, well, Monica, you're a Black woman. Of course, you're going to see racism in everything. But if you know me, you know that's not true. I don't see racism in everything, but I'm not naive to think that racism doesn't still exist. It absolutely exists. Let me give you an example of what happened to me today. I am an Asia Wilson fan. And for those of you who don't know who Asia Wilson is, she is a WNBA basketball player. She's great. She just won her her fourth MVP. Um, she just has all of these accolades, and she's been touring a little bit. You know, they've been asking her, because like I said, she has some accolades. And I was scrolling Facebook today, and she's tall. Asia Wilson is 6'4". She's tall. She's a tall black woman, 28, 29 years old. I think she's 28. And they had posted about her being on she was on some late night show last night. I didn't see it, but it was on Facebook that she was on there. And so I don't know. I normally don't read the comments. I normally just keep scrolling when I see it. But this time I was just led to read the comments. And so there were some people um talking about her, oh, she's so manly, she's this, she's that. They compared her to another great basketball player, Caitlin Clark. I like Caitlin Clark as well. I think they're both phenomenal. They're very skilled at what they do. I never compare one with the other. I like them both. They're both outstanding basketball players. But I noticed something in the comments. There were a lot of people, what I call online bullying, by calling her names, talking about her height, comparing her. Oh, she's nothing. That no one knew about her until Caitlin Clark came on the scene. She's still not better than Caitlin. Yeah, she got all this, and still Caitlin was playing golf, and she still did better than her. And she's this, and just calling her all kinds of things, and even making some other implications about her. And so I wrote on there, and that's another thing. I never respond about to any of this. And today I said, is there a reason why we must compare? Can't they both be great at what they do? And while I got quite a few likes on that and hearts and all of that, I then began to get attacked a little bit. Because see, what I noticed, and though I didn't put this in my comment, what I noticed was the people who were making derogatory comments were white males. Now, there were quite a few white males who also was giving Asia her accolades. But when I noticed the people who was tearing her down, they were the majority white males, and there were a few white females. And I said, isn't this interesting? Not realizing that I was going to use it in this video today because it just came to me to even include it. So I said, can't we have a discussion without the online bullying? And I said, grown men bullying a young adult in her 20s, a young adult woman in her 20s, is insane to me. And so this one man replied and said, clearly you don't know the sport because that's what they do. And I said, oh, I didn't know. I responded, I said, oh, I didn't know that's what sports was about because I'm a huge sports fan. I played sports in school and I never received any bullying. I received respect. So this, so this one response said, you're just as bright as the color of your skin. And I sat there and I paused, and you know what I did? I laughed. And I responded and said, I'm sorry, this doesn't work for me because I don't respond to ignorance. I said, this says more about you than it does about me, but it didn't work. It didn't work. I don't get upset about people when they make racist comments. I don't. Some people do, even some of my friends do, and it's not right. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. It just doesn't cause a rise in me. It doesn't. Because I know the truth. I know who I am. I know who I identify, and that is my Messiah. So I don't listen to people make racist comments, especially when they're geared towards me. I just don't give into it. Why? Because if you give into it and if you get upset and if it causes a rise in you, then you have literally satisfied what they set out to do, but it didn't work. So, yes, racism does in fact exist today, but everything isn't racist. So, with that, I'm coming to an end. Next time, part three, we're going to talk about slavery's fingerprints throughout this movie, things that are hidden in plain sight. So now you know this film isn't random chaos. It's not just about technology or paranoia or social breakdown. Again, within the first few minutes, and within the first few minutes, it announced exactly what this movie was going to be about. America's original sin of slavery and the reckoning that's been delayed for over 400 years. We saw the crack in the wall that was always there. We heard the song The Revenge announcing retribution. We drove and took exit 76, and we know that's from 1776 Promise of Freedom. However, we saw that if we took that exit, that was Point Comfort, where slavery began in 1619. We were warned by Misled that we've been deceived about this journey, and we watched the White Lion, the very ship that brought the first enslaved Africans to America, crash onto Charleston Harbor, the largest slave port in our history. Again, the ghost of 1619 has beached itself in the present. History is no longer buried in the past, it's crashing onto the shore, demanding to be seen. And not just in the movie, even in America today. Think about the assassination of Charlie Kirk and how there was such a racial divide after that, and still is. There's still a racial divide. Think about every time you see a police officer shoot someone that's unarmed, a black person. Think about the injustices. Think about, and I don't normally talk politics, but think about how many people spoke about Vice President Harris. And I pause because I'm still shocked at some of the things that I read about her. It wasn't about what she stood for. There were people calling her monkeys. There were people calling her names. There were people just calling her names and saying things about her simply because she was a black woman. And then, you got into the debate of whether or not she was a black woman. So I'm going to say she was a woman of color. So if you're one of those who think racism does not exist and that some people are just overly sensitive, you're part of the problem. If you're one of those people who think there's racism in everything, and every time a black person is not recognized or promoted, or every time something happens and it doesn't seem to be positive for the black community, then it's racist. And to you, I say, you're part of the problem. I am simply showing what's in the movie, but I'm also letting you know that the reason I was drawn to the movie was because of the talk about how the ending didn't make sense. But I'm gonna tell you that it does make great sense. But also, I watched it because once I realized that it wasn't about politics, because I don't like to talk politics. And at that time, I didn't want to watch a movie about politics. I really didn't. But then I said, Monica, if former President and First Lady Obama executive produced this movie, then you might want to watch it just to see what it's about. I had no idea. I had no idea. However, when I started seeing things in the movie, eh, there you go. So now I know that some of you are thinking, or maybe some people have already told you that I am reaching, that I'm overanalyzing, that I'm reading too much into random details and coincidences. Maybe you've heard it. It's just a movie, Monica. You're seeing things that aren't there. But here's what I need you to understand. We've only scratched the surface. The prologue announced the thesis, but the filmmakers didn't stop there. They embedded slavery's fingerprints everywhere in this film. In some of the scenes, some of the art, numbers, everything. In the props, in the background, in the words that they speak, in places that they go, as I've clearly shown. Part 3 is going to prove to you beyond any reasonable doubt that this is not reaching, this is not overanalyzing, this is not a coincidence. What I am about to show you is what they hid out in the open. It's hidden out in the open in this movie. Things you can verify for yourself, details that are undeniable once you see them, evidence that was planned, it was intentional, it was meticulous. Almost every single detail, things you thought were random, things you didn't even notice, all of it is deliberately chosen to tell the story of American slavery. So in part 3, Slavery's Fingerprint, Hidden in Plain Sight, I'm going to show you just how deep this encoding goes. We're going to examine the Easter eggs that prove this wasn't an accident. This wasn't the filmmakers getting lucky with a few coincidences. This was designed, and when you see it, you won't be able to argue it away. And in fact, once you see it and once you point out, again, I'm only pulling out what I feel is obvious. There were other scenes that I didn't bring out in the movie that I didn't bring out in these slides. But once you see slavery's fingerprints all over this film, you'll never watch it again the same way. In fact, you'll do what I did. You'll watch it over and over again, and each time I watch it, I pick up something else. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss part 3. Share this series with someone who needs to see what's really happening, not only just in this film, but it's really happening in America. And get ready because we're about to go even deeper, even deeper. Part 3, Slavery's Fingerprints, Hidden in Plain Sight. Thank you for watching part 2, The Blue Wall Cracks. Again, I am Monica, and I'll see you in part 3. Let's keep shattering the silence together.